Welcome to another episode of PoE University. This is going to be a presentation from Mr. Khan. He is one of the best lab runners in the entire world and is going to teach you a lot about the Labyrinth. So if you want to learn more about lab, how to make money off it, loads of stuff, loads of cool tips and tricks coming in this episode.
Well, thank you so much, Ziz. I was really inspired to see how much money you made in hardcore lab running, and it really made me be more motivated to teach people in both softcore and hardcore not only how to navigate the lab, but how to use it to ignore all of the league mechanics and just focus on making money in the lab. So this is Labyrinth 101, and we're going to start at the very basics. We're really going to make sure that people, if they haven't even played the game, know what the labyrinth is, know how to avoid it, know how to get through it, or maybe how to invest into it for a profit-making strategy. Oh, wait. This might not be the right slide. Oh, yes, none. I would not date any other PoE characters. I'm very happily married. But Izaro's just so damn thick, though. He's a good-looking dude. He also has a very deep voice, which you'll hear very often in the Labyrinth. But first, to get to the Labyrinth, we'll need to go through the Trials of Ascendancy. So, the Labyrinth was added in the Ascendancy League in, I believe, 2.2.0. You were playing back then, right, Ziz?
Yes, sir.
How was it before Ascendancies?
I mean, that was like the biggest source of power creep. And back then, it was a lot more everything can do everything. Like, you would have more like witches running around with melee weapons than now and stuff like that. Like, it didn't really matter your base class that much.
So I guess you could say Lab is probably the single biggest addition to Path of Exile.
Yeah, I would say so.
Well, I think of it that way too. So basically, what they did was they gated your Ascendancy decisions behind these Trials of Ascendancy. These trials were meant to test aspiring leaders, their body, mind, and soul. But essentially, they're just static puzzles distributed throughout the campaign. You have a certain set of puzzles for normal mode, for cruel lab, for merciless lab, and you have to complete these to go on to the various difficulties of the labyrinth. So you'll see normal, cruel, and merciless all have their trials in the campaign, and Eternal, or the Uber Lab, which it's more colloquially referred to as, has its trials found in maps. And in Harvest, we did have a fifth difficulty added, which is the Enriched Eternal Labs. We refer to them as usually the Gifted Lab or the Harvest Labs. You can actually convert offerings in Harvest or drop them in Heist to get to this fifth stage. There are no trials to get to this fifth level of lab, so only the first four. All trials must be completed to access the various difficulties of the Lord's Labyrinth. And the cool thing is that progression through these trials is shared between all the players' characters on a per league basis. So this means you can practice your league start, and you can go through all the skill points and all of the labs. And on your second character, you'll feel completely lost because you don't know the pathing if you skip the labs. I usually have to always ask my chat where to go. So when these Eternal Trials are completed, and we're talking about the fourth set of trials that are found in maps, they do drop an offering to the goddess. This offering, when you do click the stone, is your ticket to the Eternal Lab once you get out of the trials. So if you're an SSF, or if you're early league trade, it's a really good idea to farm these offerings. It was actually introduced in 3.14, a way to spawn random trials. You can now add an offering to the map device and spawn a random trial to try to knock out all 6 of your Eternal Lab trials. But these Eternal Lab trials, again, are only found in maps, so it's tradition to share map portals in Trade League in Global 820. So we'll start talking about the actual Lord's Labyrinth now. There, again, are 5 difficulties, ranging from eye level 33 to eye level 83. We just have a list here of all of the different areas which they're found in throughout the campaign. These locations are referenced on PoELab.com if you guys want to check that out. The locations are always the same, but within the actual area, they vary a little bit. It's not really a significant variant. So you'll be able to knock these out with ease with a little bit of practice. Generally, these trials have one type of trap, and they are fairly short compared to the actual lab. My first hardcore character that I tried just a couple weeks ago, I died in one of these trials, so they can be actually pretty deadly. I recommend keeping an extra life flask if needed, because even professional lab runners can get really screwed by some of these more deadly traps. I will mention that the traps on the ground, the spike traps, they do percentage damage. Most of the physical traps do percentage damage. So it doesn't matter if you go in there with a super buffed 4K health character, you can still end up dying without proper navigation. You'll definitely notice on the side here that there are enchantments that you can have. As you progress through the Lord's Labyrinth, most of the currency that can be made is from these enchantments. So glove enchantments are okay. The boot enchants get quite lucrative, and helmet enchants are where all the damage and money is at. So let's talk about the 3 Enriched Eternal Labs. Most of the time, when we're going through the game, you really only need to focus on the first 4 labs to get to your 4 Ascendancy points. But once you can actually get up to clearing the 3 Enriched labs, that's where all the profit's to be made. It's probably my water. You might have heard my water. Alright, so yeah, I wanted to talk about these labs. They were introduced in Harvest. You use dedications, tributes, and gift to the goddesses to get to them, and they offer a new level of difficulty to the lab. Dedications, which offer belt enchants, you can see that there's increased damage to the traps, so you'll need definitely a beefier character to run through those. Tributes offer more money at the end in the treasure chests, and they buff up Izaro incredibly. He has 400% increased max life in this mode. It's a really good game mode to test out if you're, or it's a really good lab to test out if you're ready for dedication and gifts, because it's so much harder than the others on the boss fights. Definitely don't recommend this for a first try in hardcore. But gift to the goddesses are probably the most popular lab. The gift offerings go for 5 to 10 times more currency than the others in Trade League. But the cool thing about gifts is that they offer 6 extra enchants at the divine font at the end of the lab. I guess before I do talk about finding offerings, which is usually done for farming enchants or doing other sorts of chest or key runs, I wanted to talk about the divine font. So the divine font is at the end of the labyrinth, and it offers the ability to actually enchant your items. It's the thing when you walk up to it, and it offers you a list of things to enchant. It's basically, for me as a lab runner, the most important part of the labyrinth. And being able to enchant 8 different items is way better than 1 at a time. So how do we get to that 8? It's a combination of a prophecy called Twice Enchanted and the Harvest Lab, or the Gift Lab, which gives us 6 extra. So we take that 1 base, we add the 1 from the prophecy, and then another 6 from the Gift to the Goddess, and we get 8 different enchants. This gets even more insane when we know that every choice we get, or every every enchant that is offered, we have 3 different helm enchants, 1 belt enchant, and 1 boot enchant to pick from. So that's 24 different helm enchants that we get to select from, and we have the entirety of our stash of helms to choose from of which enchant to put on. So things get fairly lucrative at the end game. But let's talk about these offerings a little bit. We're going to back it up a bit to SSF and Early Trade League. Okay, I can mute my mic for the gulp. I apologize for that. So let's back it up to SSF and Trade League. Offerings are really hard to come by in early SSF and definitely early trade. Even the base offerings to the goddess can be worth 3C in the first couple of days, which is fairly expensive in Trade League. So we have a few tips here. I was consulting with one of the best SSF players I know, Rainbabe42, and she was telling me her ideas for farming offerings in the early SSF League. The other best SSF player I know, of course, is Zizaran.
Thanks.
So, and correct me if you have any more tips here, or don't correct me, but add to it. Rain was telling me that one of the best ways to farm offerings early league is to farm heist. You get fragment chests within lockpicking contracts, and once you're level 60, or 60 or so, she starts buying them from Wakano and Rogue Harbor. And they're actually pretty cheap from Wakano. I think a lot of them are just the Chance Orb, which I think are fairly easy to come by in those first couple days.
Yeah.
So look for the fragment chests, because farming heist can drop, I think, like 3 or 4 offerings per chest sometimes. So it's pretty insane. I believe perception contracts can also drop twice enchanted prophecies, which can increase your enchants at the end of the lab. The other way to farm offerings is to just spam maps. Any trial you find in maps, even if you've completed it, will drop an offering at the end. And you can zoom through tier 1 maps to find these offerings. Some people don't like heist, other people profit off it. That's all I'm saying. Same thing with lab.
I don't think anyone likes heist. I just think some people profit off it.
What was Chris saying about people will play the most fun builds even if it's unfun, or the most powerful builds even if they're unfun.
Yep.
That's the same thing it is with Labyrinth. Even if we don't like it, we make so much dang money off of it. No, I'm just kidding.
See, Lab
It's
I do
actually
like.
What'd you say, this?
See, Lab I do like. That's actually so fun.
Yeah, exactly right. For those of us who can actually enjoy lab or are crazy enough to continue to run it, it is can be quite the league to just run thousands of labs. All right, so let's talk about offerings in Trade League. One of the best ways of getting offerings early is creating buy offers, and we'll get to a couple slides on that later. But instead of just bulk buying in the trade site or bulk buying manually on a Discord, or like pinging your buddies a bunch, you can actually create buy offers to allow people to come to you, and they will sell you their offerings without having to waste your time on trade sites or third-party programs. So certain items may be listed for bulk sale, and this is all gotten from the trade site in the About section. Certain items may be listed for bulk sale, and your eligible items will be grouped together under one price with the total amount of items presented as stock. So what we do is we put a buy offer on our chaos, and instead of fusings, we're gonna look for offerings to the goddess. So this will list our intent. If we do price 1/2, we'll list our intent to buy 1 offering for 2 chaos orbs. So early league, you're gonna have so many people who have done their trials, they've done everything, and they have a bunch of offerings laying around, and they want to make 1 to 2C, which is huge money in Trade League early on. So they'll ping you like crazy. I can't tell you, I probably got 60 to 81 chaos offerings to the goddess in Trade League last league, just from doing buy offers. So you can go and reference this slide later. You can ping Zizaran. It was kind of confusing to set up at first, but you just set your public tab. You just make your tab public, and then you right-click on the chaos currency, and then it'll have a drop down for currency here. So how do we actually run the lab if we don't want to run it on our main characters? We're going to go through a couple of builds in softcore and hardcore that will help you specialize a bit in lab. If you're running it on your main character, I'll say good luck, bring an extra life class, and we'll have some more tips for you later. So the first really popular build that I came across for softcore was the Toxic Rain Pathfinder, or even Raider. It's mostly specialized as a Pathfinder for the extra flask uptime, and you get a little bit more damage on your Toxic Rain from the Ascendancy choices. But this is not only a great league starter, and Ziz has an awesome video on Toxic Rain, but you can end up moving around 400% move speed fairly easily with the Queen of the Forest and some other move speed uniques. There was actually a really popular guide called the Non-Reverse Chill Toxic Rain Pathfinder on the forums a year or so ago, which took advantage of the Berserk phase run method. But essentially with Toxic Rain, you're going to be looking to get through the traps quickly with your movement speed and kiting Izaro around in circles with Toxic Rain. The second build I want to go over is the one that I play. Many people over the years have contributed to this build. And before maybe 6 months ago, it was not as popular, not as known about. A lot of the lab information was gated behind who you knew, and everything was shrouded in secrecy because the profits were thought to be that great. But this is the Wave of Conviction Traps build. We use Berserk and Self-Chill using the Winterweave and Scold's combo. It has very low life and involves armor and weapon swaps, but we move incredibly fast, and I'll show you a little bit of this later. We're really hoping that this can work out for us again 3.15. The third softcore build that I'll talk about, excuse me, let me grab some water. It's the BFBB Archmage Raider build. So any build with Archmage MOM agnostic is amazing for lab. You can tank traps for days. You have so much sustain from your mana pool. Do the goal. You have a lot of move speed from your Raider Ascendancy, plus a Quicksilver Flask, but you're just incredibly tanky. You don't have to care about anything. If you're in Uber Lab, I mean, you can literally AFK in there. Gifted labs and dedication labs, you still have a really easy time. You'll have to be a little bit more cautious on Izaro, because he can one-shot you if he crits. But you should be really smooth with Archmage MOM agnostic. Hopefully, it's very likely going to get nerfed in 3.15, but we're still going to be keeping an eye on it, because even if they take away 50% of the power, that defensive layering can be really powerful for traps. So we will get into a little bit of hardcore build examples. I mainly just wanted to say, check out Zizaran's Herald of Agony Juggernaut build. It was incredible. It was incredible to watch Ziz run so many enchant services this league. The funniest thing was that many of the days when it was a tougher lab, he was actually getting more enchants per hour than my 1,000+ move speed build, because he just simply wasn't dying. In softcore, we can run really fast, but we can die very easily as well. You'll find many of my chat spamming, just telling me that I freaking died over and over and over. So these hardcore build examples can actually be a great idea for softcore if that's your speed. We had many people doing enchant services in the TFT Discord using Juggernaut builds. It's the tortoise and the hare situation, right? So the Herald of Agony Juggernaut is the tried and true build. Zizaran approved. He has a build guide on it, of course. But we've also seen people play the Wave of Conviction Traps build in hardcore as well. It's very rare. I've only met one person actually running this, but he told me that a couple other people and his friends have been doing it. Actually, the day we met him, he ripped a Mirror Tear helm because he forgot to have it in his stash, and he accidentally died to Izaro teleporting. So if you're doing services, make sure you keep the helm that you're enchanting in your stash. That way, if you die in hardcore, it won't rip. Um, Again, the Archmage MOM Agnostic combo is really great here. I really want to leave some space here to say that I'm not the best advocate for hardcore builds in the Labyrinth. I've seen some crazy things like a 500% attack speed, leap slam, hardcore builds made by Keed, but I really can't give you the best build advice here. Maybe you can ask in the questions section later. But I'll say that most endgame hardcore builds shouldn't have a problem with Uberlab. Uberlab is significantly easier than the enriched enchanted labs. We're talking about a magnitude of about 10. Izaro has about 3 million health per phase in Uberlab, but he has about 30 million health per phase in enriched eternal labs, in the gifted labs. As we saw earlier, the monsters are buffed in Gifted Lab, Izaro's buffed in Tribute Lab, and the traps are buffed in Dedication Lab. So not only are the monsters incredibly more tanky, they do a ton more damage, but everything else is more deadly in the endgame labs, in the eye level 83 labs. So yeah, you shouldn't really have a problem if you're an endgame hardcore build with the basic Eternal Uber labs. Oh yeah, Ziz is probably paying BR right now.
I'm not. If you can hear my PoE.
So we've talked a bit about the lab. Let's talk about reading the lab map. When you go into the game, and once you get into the lab, you'll find this blank lab map, and it looks pretty difficult until you realize that everything can be found on PoELab.com. So how do we go from this to this? Well, we'll get in game later, and I'll show you how we navigate a blank map. But it's always good to navigate to PoE Lab and figure out the daily layout. And I want to give a huge shout out to Suit Size Small and the team at PoE Lab, because they save us lab runners, or any casual person going through the lab, if you just want to go browse on the site for that day's layout. They save us a ton of time and a lot of headaches. I believe Suit Size Small has been running these lab notes every day for the last 4 or 5 years, and I think the only time that Suit missed a lab note was when Texas literally froze over. So big shout out to Suit Size Small. Yeah, it's like super dedication. So let's talk about how to read this map. It's one of the most requested questions in my chat. So what I look at first is the additional notes. We see the shortest path for today's lab of July 16th is 8 rooms. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that is the shortest possible room if we don't go for dark shrines or keys. And I'm not a key runner or a dark shrine runner, so we're going to be talking about just getting through the lab as soon as you possibly can, so you can get on with your life, you can go to maps, you can do whatever you want to do. Or you can just rush to the enchants like us. So the shortest path is 8 rooms here. We're going to figure out the pathing here. And we want to look at the Izaro phases. So Izaro can have 3 different types of weapon sets. He can be with the 2-hand mace, he can be with a sword and shield, or he can be dual-wielding swords. So this is really important because it guides what sort of attacks he can do. I'm going to go ahead and open up PoE Lab's guide section, and you can find this on PoELab.com. This website is amazing. Not all of it is completely up to date, but I'd say 95% of it is. All right. So this is the PoE Lab section on Izaro weapons and attacks. You'll see here his 2-handed mace, the dual swords, the sword and shield, and the goddess on top of his head. She just sits on his head. Don't worry about the mechanics of it. The important thing we want to look at are all of his different attacks. And if you're a hardcore player, this website is crucial to understanding how to not die. So if it's a sword and shield a day, you'll have to keep track of any shield move you can use. You'll see at the end, this attack can be only used with the shield charge. Ground slam can be used with any weapon combination. He does these rumbly spike things that kill us a lot as lab runners. It's any weapon combination. The Sunder attack, he tends to delay this attack a lot, even after you've already phased him. It can only be used with the mace. The Leap Slam attack, and maybe they'll give him a totem next patch. It can be only used with dual swords or a mace. And we have Divine Slash here, which can only be used with swords. So I highly recommend you check this out and pin it if you are running hardcore. In softcore, sure, it's a great idea to familiarize yourself with the fights, but a lot of times we just run and gun. The fight gets a little bit more complicated because there is a goddess. This is the goddess we always hear about, but rarely see. I guess we do see her on every splash screen. She's kind of hiding on his head, but the goddess shoots a bunch of barrage. She shoots a barrage that can be really deadly, and she does it twice. One for some like skeleton move. It basically looks like the same move to me and interacts the same way. Just one has skeletons at the bottom for flasks uptime. The most deadly one is probably the teleport, though. Once you get past the normal lab, so I'll definitely put this in the notes section. Maybe we'll put this whole site on the YouTube description, but this specific page is vital. Where the slides at? We'll just close out of that. Okay, so we're at Izaro phases here, and we have gone over his weapons and attacks. The next most important thing, especially for lab running, and I think in the past this was probably the most deadly part of the lab. Am I right, Ziz? The reflects.
Well, I mean, depends on what time frame, but like lately, yeah, reflect has been pretty bad until they, well, still pretty deadly.
They removed reflect recently, right?
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about it too much, but you do have some pretty nasty side characters that are with Izaro. The two main things that we look out for now as lab runners are the essences and the gargoyles. There are a couple more mechanics that we have to look out for. There are certain mechanics that buff Izaro, and you have to interact with the things you have to click on the screen. But for the most part, we care about the essences and the gargoyles for lab running. Essences are very deadly. The lightning essence can one-shot you from off screen. There's a lightning, a frost, and a fire golem, and they do a ton of damage. So Essence Day is always very brutal. If you guys are interested in lab running and you come into my Discord, it's mostly just a bunch of people moping about Essence Day or Gargoyle Day. Mostly Essence Day, though. The gargoyles can be very deadly as well because they leap at you. They have this insanely fast leap attack that can do like upwards of 2 to 3k damage, which is pretty deadly when we're only running with like 2 to 3k health to begin with. So we mostly try to kill him really fast and get the heck out of there. But you definitely want to check out what's accompanying Izaro to know what might be ahead of you in that lab run.
I think the charge disruptors can get very overwhelming for new players too, because they might not know how to turn them off, or might have clicked them too early. So if you end up with Izaro with 20 charges, that's pretty insane.
Yeah, charge disruptors are... So admittedly, I don't have too much experience with like early game Labyrinth, because I usually just try to get through it and rush to lab running. But yeah, the charge disruptors, you just click them when you're up, or when do you usually click them, or how do you handle them in hardcore?
So normally I'll click one after like 6 seconds. I mean, generally for me, since I have a lot of damage, I only need to click one and then he'll be down. But if you're a new player, just try to like damage him like 10%, then click one, damage another 10%, then click one, because you don't want to end up having a large amount of charges. They basically give a lot of like attack speed, so he can be very, very fast. So if you have that and gargoyles, he's just insanely fast.
And if you wait for him to get super buffed, he'll actually give an extra key at the end, which is pretty cool.
Yep.
So even if you do it wrong, you're rewarded.
Unless it's by death.
Unless it's by death. So we also have talked about the gauntlets and puzzles. It just tells us what type of traps lie ahead. Some of the bigger trap systems are very specific. The I guess we'll probably see them later. We can also check out a slide on PoELab.com or a page there. But I think in hardcore, it probably is good to familiarize yourself with that trap layout, and if it's a bad trap layout, maybe you can skip it. So if it's okay with you guys, I thought I'd get on my character and kind of do like a slow live run through of the labyrinth. Do you think that's okay, Ziz?
I think that's a great idea.
All right, let's get to it. I think on Discord, I don't know if we're streaming at like 30 FPS or what, but hopefully it looks smooth, and if it's not, you can just blame me in chat.
Nice.
So, my favorite town is the Kurai Shores. Not only is it really close to the waypoint, but not many people spawn here. So it's easy to get to the Esperance Plaza. The build we'll be running through with today is featuring the Dark Magic weapon with Infernal Weapon Effect. It's usually the biggest question I get. But this is the Reverse Chill build, and this is my standard runner that I made in Ritual. But I don't think any of the gear's legacy, it's just hard to craft. All of the mechanics are the same, actually, so we're just going to be having a little bit more move speed than usual. But we're using the Reverse Chill with Winter Weave, and we have a bunch of skins on, so I'll go through everything really quick. Just the, and this is the stereotypical lab runner build. This is like, zoom, go really fast in softcore. You might die a lot, but you're going to be getting upwards of 1,000 enchants an hour if you're a skilled runner.
1,000?
Oh, I guess it'd be, what is the math here? So we can do 24 enchants in about 3 or 4 minutes. We'll call it 4 minutes or so, right? Oh wait, is that horribly off? 360 enchants an hour? Okay, I was sorry, I was thinking about... Alright, that was Papega math. Papega math, Mr. Khan.
Oh, good. I was like, that's a lot of enchants.
So we're going to be getting 300, 400 enchants an hour. This is NA math. But we're running really, really fast, so we can be able to do that. Previously, it would be good to get about 100 enchants an hour. So the buffs in 3.14 were insane for lab running. Alright, so we're using the Winter Weave for the Reverse Chill. We also are interacting with the Oxium, which puts our energy shield at 0. And that allows us to take advantage of the Agnostic. So once our energy shield is 0, then our chill effect and freeze duration are based on that energy shield, which makes our action speed when reverse chilled always capped. We do reverse chill ourselves and freeze ourselves with the Scolds interaction. We hit ourselves with Scolds, our mana costs are converted to physical damage, and we end up converting that physical damage to cold damage with the 8% physical damage from hits taken as cold damage implicit on our shield. Any shield can work as long as it has this corruption. The Peripatia is just significantly better for the chance of extra implicits and the 20% move speed. The evasion also helps take advantage of the affixes on the Queen of the Forest. We get 1% increased movement speed per 600, evasion up to 75%. So we really want to cap our evasion for that move speed. For boots, we're just using onslaught implicit boots, nothing too important there, but I wanted to explain the main mechanics there. All right, so let's get to an actual run here. This is the main section that we're looking at when choosing a lab: the normal, cruel, merciless, and eternal lab, and then we have our enriched labs here at the end. So we'll just start with an Uber lab here. We're always going to load into an state walkways every single time, and we'll get this blank map at the beginning. So throughout the lab, you'll see these current location markers here, and it's always a good idea to familiarize yourself where you are in the labyrinth if you're a first-time runner, or if you're a veteran like me. So every zone that you have the estate walkways first, and we'll talk through them, has a set of limited layouts that are auto-generated. They end up, there must be over 20 variants of each one, but they're like micro differences, you know, like all of the exits and entrances end up being the same. So we're going to go through this beginning area, and the estate walkways, you can usually find one entrance on the right, and then in certain layouts, you'll find one or two to the top. But the first place we usually check is just this right entrance here. You'll see at our current location, we've discovered a little bit more of the map, and we can find something going up and right and maybe down. And this is the part where we go, oh shit, I gotta actually get on PoELab.com.
You sure
So
you're
we're gonna look
fast
at this
enough?
map. We're always going for more. I guess I can tell a little bit of that when I'm running. So you'll see this up way is a dead end. It's a key. And this bottom way is a dead end as well. So we can see that we're on the right path here. Yeah, so at one point we actually did try to push 1500% move speed. And it turns out when you have to sacrifice things for move speed, you end up at the end of the day sacrificing quality of life and survivability. So in our case, we have to sacrifice a lot of flask uptime, flask charges gained, and survivability. So we'd be going so much faster, about 140% increased move speed faster, but our quality of life was actually garbage. It felt so bad to run it. I felt bad. I felt bad for the people watching me on stream, and more than anything, I felt bad for myself. All right, so we've made it to this next room. We're at the silver key. There is a silver key here. You can go for it, or you can just ignore it. We usually ignore it because we're in the domain walkways, and things are not very forgiving here. The domain walkway is a cool area. With the estate walkways, we would usually go up or right, and then there's like a top exit as well. With the domain walkways, we're thinking in circles, because it's usually a counterclockwise or clockwise layout, depending on which direction we're running, whether we're going up to down or top to bottom. So we're going to go in, we're going to cast our smoke mine, our flask, our berserk, and phase run, and we're going to be looking for this circular layout, which usually goes down is one entrance. See this counterclockwise layout? Or up, and I think we have our silver key there, but yep, so we have our aspirant's trial here. Yeah, we're at about 1368% move speed here. So for this flavor of Lab Runner, and again, I have seen a couple people do this on hardcore, but we're going to be utilizing a few swaps here. So we have our equipment that makes us go really fast, and then we'll swap out our helm and armor here, and we can switch to our scepters. Alright, so we'll show how I usually do this. So all of our 24 traps go off instantly, and right before they go off, we proc all of our auras to be able to one-shot him. And yeah, I will say this is a really extreme case of lab running, but this is what, if you come to my channel and you want to get into lab running, I'll say like, some people say like professional lab running, but it's really just a method of making a ton of currency early in the league, and then midway through the league, we can try to buy cool builds on trade. But we also do have a couple SSF players who come through and make these builds so that they can farm their enchants better on all of their other standard SSF players. So we're going through the Basilica Passage here. Most of the time, these layouts are all top right. I usually always try top right for all of the layouts. We saw in the state pathways early on, it was the top right. Domain is the clockwise, but Basilica is usually always top right. And there are some cases when you have to go up, then right, then left. But It depends on how many sections and how many doors there are. If there were 3 doors branching off from this room, then we'd have a top right, a top left, and a middle left option. But since we only have 1 exit here, we're only looking for a top right.
And for those watching on YouTube, this is not sped up. This is real time.
This is the power creep Chris was talking about. But there, and one of the reasons I'll say that I got so into Path of Exile were the insane builds that people could come up with, that just really pushed the limits of what is possible in Path of Exile. And I think there are so many interesting mechanics that come together to this build that make it really enjoyable. All right, so we're back in the domain pathways, but the difference here is that we're at a gold door. So I'd say 90% of the labs, we have gold doors within the Labyrinth. And when there's not a gold door, you usually see a post on Reddit saying, hey guys, no gold door today, and everybody rejoices. Because they can be a little bit more difficult when we're getting the key, but they also change up the layout. So when you see any room, domain walkway, basilica passage, a sanatorium, and it's a gold door, the layout is usually always straight. So we have a little bit of a circle motion here on these domain, but this gold door is always in the same spot. And we're always looking for the annex, because annex means key room. And always when referring to the golden key, it's an annex. So if we go back here, this golden door is in the same spot, but we first have to get the key. All right, let's talk about the annex, because this is universal knowledge for any build going through the labyrinth. Once you're at the golden key and you're in the annex, it's almost the same as that. What is this layout here? I think it's the ossuary one where you go in a circle and up in the key. It's almost identical to that, right? Where you get the key right before Kataba. So we're going to be going in a clockwise circle here through the mansion annex. This mansion annex is actually one of the most difficult annexes. Papega runner coming through. This is the longest annex out of all of the annexes. And you can see with our move speed, we don't have to be great pathing. We don't have to be very great at pathing because speed makes up for everything. Alright, so we've gotten the golden key and we've unlocked the golden door and we're at phase 2 still. We have one more section to go to before we get to phase 2.0. So we're going to the sanatorium room. The sanatorium rooms are very classic case of opening way too many doors. If you like heist, you'll probably like sanatorium rooms because they are definitely the most annoying in the lab. But mechanically, it's pretty cool because you can work on your clicking abilities. Sanatorium rooms are really similar layouts door-wise as basilicas because you usually have a top right door. But depending on how many rooms branch off, you can have one over to the left here, which isn't there today, or you can have a middle left navigation route. So you're usually thinking middle left or top right hang a left. But mostly just top right. Like when you're running through the lab, you just go top right every time. Easy clap. We can do our gear swaps, take off our jewel. And we even phase run at the end there to add some extra stealth. Alright, so we're at the phase 3 of the lab. We're almost there to the enchants. We're almost there to have our final rundown with Izaro. And we're in a sepulcher room. Sepulcher rooms are my favorite. Not only is there not many things to block your path, but there's low monster density, and the layouts are fairly short and quick. So again, these routes are pretty limited. I'd say there's three main layouts in Sepulcher. This is a 3-room layout where we have a middle, a top middle, and a top right. And most of the Sepulcher layouts, again, are top right, usually zigzag up to this top right door up here. But this one is one of the other really common ones. I'll say you can look out for, there's one layout of Sepulcher where you do have to go left, but I'd really say like when you go left, it's maybe 1/4 of the time. But what's cool about this room is we do have 3 viable options for getting to Izaro here, as we saw in the PoE lab. We can take this domain path. We want to go in circles. I think PoE lab said go for the middle route, which is also a Sepulcher passage. So anytime I see another Sepulcher, I always go for it because they're usually short and sweet. And at the bottom we have another Basilica, which can be long and straight. Again, another top right section. So we'll go for the Sepulcher here. Yeah, lab builds are it's an easy lab, and it's so easy to farm a lot of money. Yeah, exactly. VIP that guy. Alright, we have another Sepulcher passage here. And we'll go in for the final kill. I'd say the important thing here is that if you want to make sure you have your Twice Enchanted Prophecy procced, it'll show up here if you're in the final room. It doesn't show out. It does not show up throughout any of the lab until the final room. So if you don't have it, you can just pop it here. It's always good to check. So we've made it to the Divine Font. And the one thing I want to point out here is that this room has a lot of things going on. I guess I said one point, but there are a couple points I want to make here. First of all, the chests have a chance of dropping the infamous lab jewels that used to be gated behind the #1 spot in the lab ladder. RIP lab ladder, please bring it back. But these chests have a chance to drop the Emperor's Mastery Jewel, which used to be worth, I don't know how much it was worth on hardcore, but in softcore it was used for like very end-game builds, people with way too much currency. But if you're lucky enough to farm one of these jewels, in League it can go for 30 to 50 exalt.
We had one.
Did you drop one on hardcore?
No. Did 4 or 5 days of lab and didn't get one.
We've had people. I think one of my buddies ran about 3,000 labs this league or something insane like that, like 2,000 or 3,000, and never saw one. And then others have gotten quite lucky. So the chests are really great, especially for early league. They drop a lot of. They have the chance of dropping a lot of bubblegum currency, and it can be really great for SSF early league. But this is the Divine Font. This is where we pick all of our enchants. We have our 3 enchants here. It was reworked last patch. But we have 3 helm options with 2 enchants remaining because we have 1 for base type of Eternal Lab, and we have 1 extra from Twice Enchanted. We do have our boot and glove enchants here. My favorite glove enchants are the Phantom of Spite when hit. If we put back on our scolds, it makes blue stuff go everywhere. It's pretty cool. So we can get up to 8 enchants remaining here with Gift to the Goddesses. But I think for new players, the main thing that they'll interact with, where they go about their way, is the Altar of Ascendancy. So when you're picking Ascendancies, you get 2 points at a time, but you can also respec with this Altar of Ascendancy. If you respend all of your passives and you rerun a lab, then you can go in here and it'll offer you the chance to reroll. So a lot of the times I like leveling up with Raider, and then I'll switch into Pathfinder later, and I'll always go run a normal lab and respec the Altar of Ascendancy. The other cool thing I wanted to mention about the lab is there was a lot of really interesting things added by the developers, and I'm not quite sure why. There are conspiracy theories, and we may get into that in a little bit, maybe if you guys have more questions about it later. But there are murals on the wall, or there are these like I guess you could call them like wall sculptures. And they change every lab. You have a grandmother with two boys. You have some dude like uppercutting a guy, or he's smelling his armpit or something. You have some man with two boys. You got the grandpa and you got the grandma.
Maybe it
But some
indicates
people
what reward is from what chest. Ooh.
exactly. So we think the secret sauce to the lab is in the grandmothers. And the grandmothers will guide your way. Where all of the pictures, I think the memes just say the grandmothers are really, if there's more of them, it's good luck. But there was a really infamous Reddit post, and maybe we'll link it later, but there's a big conspiracy on how these can end up influencing which enchants you'll see at the end of the day. Because in the Labyrinth, there are about 700 helm enchants you can get now, and it is completely random on what you get, unless you know secrets behind the grandmas. Yeah, so that's it. I mean, that's basically a run through the lab. You return to town. We're in our starting spot, and you just go right back to the Aspirants Plaza. When we're going really fast, we can do these anywhere from 2 minutes, depending on the lab layout, 2 minutes to 3.5 minutes. I guess I do want to just speak about the helm enchants really quickly, if you guys don't mind. I was gonna have a big slide prepared on this again. Sorry for screwing up the time there.
Oh yeah.
But let's see. I guess I need to go on my in-league characters. I'll go on my budget lab runner here. So the cheapest you can do this build in the developed league is about 170 chaos, and that was on day 45. But the more expensive gift builds can get upwards of 50 plus X, which is something that you can earn with your budget build. But what I want to talk about is how we get so much money from these, and it's usually from doing enchant services or just enchanting a bunch of bases. So you'll see this really poorly organized section, but you can see a ton of bases here. And what we do is we just collect a bunch of them, and a bunch of them are like, you know, anytime Mathel makes a new build, I'll check out his forum guide. He had 15 builds he made this league. And every time he released a build, we go to his forum, we see what kind of helm he's using, and if it has a unique enchant. And if it has like a unique helm with an enchant that is crucial to the build, we invest, chat. We invest really hard. I think one of his Ice Spear builds, we made about 90x in one day from getting really lucky with additional proj. So you want to snipe your creators. You want to sub to Ziz, you want to sub to Mathel, you want to follow all their videos, because you can make a ton of money from just riding on their coattails. You know, I say that and it's mostly true, but most of our money is actually made from just enchanting really common bases. I will put you know, maybe Zizaran, we could collab on a video, or I could just give you a list and you can make a video. But there are a lot of really common bases you can buy early league. We have our Hubrises that are eye level 85. Our Bone Helms have to be eye level 86. You have Elder Bone Helms, you have Royal Bridgenets, you have a lot of like the new Viridi's Veil that's good in a lot of early builds. But you have a lot of bases that once you learn what enchants go well on them and you add those to your repertoire, you can increase your exalt per hour really easily. And I think you probably saw how ridiculous it can get on Zizaran's stream a couple months ago when he had a whole spreadsheet of all the helms and all the different enchants that people wanted. So it can become quite lucrative. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that really quick. Sorry it's not too in-depth. But yeah, basically, as we were going through the lab, you can see that traps didn't really affect us too much. It's because we were so quick. Speed equals survivability in the lab. But if you don't have enough of it, you'll actually have to pay a lot of attention to the traps. You'll see people being able to do, zoomed in lab runs. Like I saw on Subtractum's Twitch the other day, it was just insane. His precision, the precision of his cursor. Or you see like any of these top hardcore players going through Ziz's gauntlet, and they just have insane precision with their cursors to be able to navigate these traps. But one of the biggest things to know is that most of the traps are percentage health based. So the only traps that are doing flat damage are the elemental nova traps, the frost nova trap, the flame nova trap, the lightning trap. Those ones can be quite deadly. But most of the time you're dealing with percentage flask. So as long as you flask appropriately and maybe bring an extra one, you'll have an easier time. The other thing is I recommend bringing Flame Dash over Dash, or some ability that you can hop over traps. Flame Dash is quite OP for the Labyrinth. And finally, the purity of elements, purity of fire, purity of lightning. Gems can be very great for the elemental nova traps if you do have the extra slots in hardcore, or if you're just having trouble with softcore. Having extra fire resist can be quite crucial for lasting through certain trap layouts with both flame traps and percentage health traps going up at the same time.
Awesome.
Yep. So that's about it for me. Thanks for bearing with me, everybody.
Does anybody have any questions? That was really good.
Hey, thanks, Ziz. Yeah, apologies again to Ziz and Chad and Rocky for being a little bit tardy.
All good. Time zones are hard.
Math is hard for us Pepega runners,
That's
but
true.
if you can be as dumb as me and make as many mirrors as I did last league, just by running through the labyrinth, then maybe we can talk.
How much money did you make last league?
So I'll preface this what I always say to people who ask me in chat, but I work full time in software, and I have 2 young kids at home, so I actually only play 4 days a week after league start. And we made our first mirror, I guess, after day 16 of the league, of the functional league, and I think we were about 3.5 mirrors after day 30. And
Wow.
at that point, we kind of went out of the lab and built a lot of Pepega builds and tried to learn how to actually play the game.
That's crazy. Def Mode is asking, how quickly does the lab profit drop off?
So it's an interesting thing, Def. It's a great question. I'd say lab profits really pick up around week 3, and this league they definitely fell off a bit more quickly than perhaps Ritual. But I think you can expect really good profits for the first 2 months, and then that last month is mostly people who are spamming crafts for like really high-end gear, or they're trying to craft things for currency, or I mean for standard, with the leftover currency. So you can still find good money in the lab in month 3 if you're doing services. That said, your bases will really take maybe I could say like 3 to 7 days to sell for like the really sought after Blizzard helms, eye level 85 Blizzard helms with like Ice Prod or Lightning Strike. So I think you could expect really good profits from week 2.5. I'd say right around 2.5, week 3, to probably like week 8. You could expect a really quick turnaround on your bases. And then services for the entire league.
Man with that is asking, how many people were you?
Wait, what is the question?
How many people were you in your group?
How many people in my group?
Yeah, because you kept saying we.
Oh, I just referred to, my wife asked me the same question. She's like, who are you referring to as we? Is I thought it was always me and you. Like she was like, I thought you were always referring to we as me and you. And then I realized that you're referring to you and chat and the fellow lab runners. So I always talk about we, and it's just me and chat and any other lab runners. We don't share currency, but I just talk about us lab runners.
Okay, cool. So I thought you had like a group that were making currency together.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is something that I've seen lab runners do. They'll go with a group, and the group will be like, hey, we can help funnel you some lab gear if you get this enchant for our, group farming strategy. Um, but yeah, I can't play as much as those group players would like to, so I usually can't team up with them.
Yeah. That makes sense. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this presentation. It was really, really good. Well done.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity of having me here, Ziz, and I thank you for your patience with my gulping chat. Um, I'll say if you have any more questions, I can pressure Ziz to make a video and just feed him any information he needs. Or you can come check out my Twitch at twitch.tv, Mr__Khan, if you want to learn more about the lab. 13.5 will introduce a lot of new fun challenges to us, but we still plan on getting that going.
That's awesome. Dude, thank you so much. And again, everybody, check him out. Go follow, subscribe, love. And yeah, thank you so much, dude.
Thank you, Ziz, and thank you, chat.